So, what on earth could a high stakes poker game possibly have in common with cutting edge therapy? It sounds like two completely different worlds, right? But the answer, and it's a fascinating one, lies deep in the neuroscience of how our brains and our bodies handle pressure. We're going to connect the poker table to the therapist's office. Let's dive in. I know, it seems like a weird question. Poker is all about bluffs and bets, while therapy, well, that's about healing and recovery. But the bridge that connects these two is our own neurochemistry. It's the very system that runs the show behind the scenes, governing how we deal with stress, how we make decisions, and how we read people. So, our whole investigation is going to start right here, at the poker table. But for a minute, I want you to completely forget about the cards, the chips, all of it. Because what we're really watching is a live experiment on the human brain under some seriously intense pressure. I mean, think about it. The poker table is this amazing, self-contained laboratory. You've got players who have to juggle their mood, their gut feelings, and cold, hard logic, all while being stared down by their opponents. It is a perfect model for studying how we handle real-world social stress. The first key player in this game, inside the game, is something called serotonin Jan-tone. You can just think of it as your brain's composure chemical. It's the stuff that lets you stay flexible and read the room accurately, instead of just, panicking and making a bad call. All right, the next piece of the puzzle is interoceptive feedback. Now, that's just a fancy scientific term for your gut feeling. It's that constant stream of data your body is sending to your brain, and your brain has to use that data to answer a crucial question. Do I trust this feeling or do I stick to the plan? And here's the thing. These two systems are locked in this incredibly fast loop. So a huge bet hits the table, that's the stressor. Your heart starts pounding, that's your interoceptive feedback. And it's your serotonin levels that decide how you process that feeling before you make your final move. This whole loop is the key to performing under pressure. And some amazing studies on female poker players brought this all to life. It showed that their ability to make decisions when everything was on the line was deeply, deeply tied to their serotonin levels and their ability to trust those gut feelings. So a poker game isn't just a game, it's a real-world stage where this entire mind-body system plays out. And that brings us from the lab to a real-life case. So now let's take this whole idea, everything we've just learned from the poker table, and apply it to the real world. We're going to look at a clinical profile of someone we can call the high-control thinker. Let's meet our patient. We'll call him Dennis. His cognitive style is what's known as a high-control thinker. Basically, he's wired to need a strong sense of order and control. Now, you add to that a history of bariatric surgery, which really impacts the nervous system, and a tendency for an incredibly vivid memory, and you've got a perfect storm for a mind and body that are on constant high alert. And here it is. This is where it all clicks. The poker player has to read opponents and stay calm while everyone's watching. Well, the high-control thinker, like Dennis, is managing a massive mental load every single day just to maintain an internal sense of control, often feeling that very same social pressure. The challenge, deep down at the neurobiological level, is exactly the same. So if the problem is a system that's just constantly redlining, how do you even begin to treat it? Well, the first part of the answer is you have to calm down the central command center, the brain itself. And one really incredible way to do this is with something called auricular therapy, or AT for short. It's a super precise technique that actually uses the outer ear as a direct interface, like a USB port, right into the central nervous system. So how in the world does that work? Well, a really gentle stimulus on a specific point on the ear activates a part of the vagus nerve, and you can think of this nerve as a direct superhighway to the brainstem. Activating it triggers the release of serotonin. And yep, you guessed it, that's the exact same composure chemical that was so critical back at the poker table. So essentially, auricular therapy is providing a top-down solution. It's directly boosting those serotonin levels, reinforcing the brain's natural ability to find that strategic calm that both the poker player and the high-control thinker desperately need to perform under pressure. But here's the catch. Treating the brain alone is not enough, because the body has its own tells. It keeps score. And that brings us to the second part of the solution. We have to silence the physical noise coming from the body. For a high-control thinker, all of that mental stress, all that overload, it has to go somewhere. And where it goes is into the body's tissues. It gets stored as physical tension, creating this constant, nagging stream of distress signals that are sent right back to the brain. These are the body's tells. Now, this stored stress physically shows up as myofascial trigger points. It sounds complex, but you know exactly what these are. They're those deep, painful, stubborn muscle knots. They're a constant source of physical noise, and in our poker analogy, they're the body's most obvious tell. And this is exactly where dry needling comes in. A practitioner uses a very, very thin needle to precisely target and stimulate these trigger points. This prompts them to finally release, which lets the local muscle chemistry go back to normal. So if auricular therapy was our top-down solution, dry needling is the bottom-up solution. By going right to the source of the physical stress signals, it literally silences that constant noise from the body, breaking the feedback loop and finally letting the brain get some peace. So now we have these two really distinct therapies, one that targets the brain and one that targets the body. But the real magic, the part that makes this a breakthrough, is how they come together to create a truly unified solution. Because for someone like our high-control thinker, you absolutely cannot just treat one side of the equation. It's like trying to clap with one hand. The brain can't be calm if the body is screaming in distress, and the body can't relax if the brain is stuck in overdrive. You have to treat both at the same time. And this table just lays it out perfectly. You've got auricular therapy working on the central nervous system from the top down, using that vagal stimulation to boost serotonin and build mental composure. At the same time, you've got dry needling working on the peripheral system from the bottom up, disrupting those trigger points to silence the body's physical tells. It's a pincer movement on stress. And for our patient Dennis, this dual approach is even more critical because of his history with bariatric surgery. That procedure really alters the gut-brain connection, which is a major highway for serotonin signaling. So the AT helps re-regulate this from the top, while the DN helps manage the physical side effects from the bottom. Together, they create what scientists call bidirectional homeostasis, which is just a fancy way of saying they create a stable, balanced conversation between the brain and the body. So think about where we started. A poker game, and we ended with this incredibly sophisticated, holistic therapy for the mind and body. It really makes you think. If the lessons from a poker table can help unlock new ways to heal, what other powerful connections are we missing? And what other keys to our own health are just hiding in plain sight, maybe in the last place we'd ever think to look?